Hi, everyone. I'm Nicholas DiSabatino. I'm the Global Publicity Manager here at the MIT Press. In the Black Fantastic is a richly illustrated exploration of Black culture at its most wildly imaginative and artistically ambitious, assembling art and imagery from across the African diaspora. The book is being published on the occasion of the exhibition In the Black Fantastic at the Hayward Gallery in London this June through September. We have the North American rights. Eshen, who is a writer and curator based in London and former director of the Institute of Contemporary Arts, shows how speculative fictions in Black art and culture are boldly reimagining perspectives on race, gender, and identity. The book includes works that span photography, painting, sculpture, cinema, graphic arts, music, and architecture. Featuring more than 300 beautiful color illustrations, this design book brings together works by leading artists and explores groundbreaking films like Daughters of the Dust, Black Panther, and Get Out. It considers the radical politics of Pan-Africanism and post-colonialism and so much more. And some of the artists showcased in this book include Nick Cave, Ellen Gallagher, Pauline Smith, Chris Ophil, Kara Walker, and many others. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nora Flaherty. I'm in the sales department at MIT Press, and I'm going to tell you about Rethinking Gender, which is a personal and conversational introduction to the complexities of gender identity presented in a graphic format. The author-illustrator Louis Loiga, who uses the pronouns they, them, is our guide throughout, along with their cat. As Louis explains right up front, the book can be a map in the landscape of gender, or a toolbox to help you empathize with others, or a notebook to help you reflect on your own gender identity. The book is full color throughout, and some pages have spaces for notes, inviting the reader to ponder and brainstorm about questions posed in the text. What I love about Rethinking Gender is how it explains concepts very clearly, while also acknowledging how gender can be highly individual and hard to pin down. The book is informative and authoritative, but also humble. It never feels like a lecture. The warmth and empathy in Louis' voice and illustrations will connect with both teens and adults. Rethinking Gender aims to be a book in which the widest possible variety of readers can see themselves reflected, valued, and affirmed, with considerations of race, body image, disabilities, and cultural stereotypes incorporated for an intersectional approach. Methuselah's Zoo. So you can think of this as a natural history book with a human hook. The prominent aging researcher Steve Austad probably knows more about longevity across many, many species of animals than anyone else. In Methuselah's Zoo, he not only tells us a series of fascinating stories of animals with long and healthy lifespans, covering a dizzying array of birds and fish and mammals, but connects those stories to human beings. What we learn by studying longevity in animals can help us to lengthen and improve human life. Animals age at amazingly different rates. Songbirds in our yards rarely live longer than a year, but Steve relates the stories of birds like Wisdom, an albatross who lives on Midway Island in the middle of the Pacific. Today, she is at least 70 years old, has fledged 11 chicks in the past 12 years, and has been estimated to have flown more than 3 million miles in her life. Some species of bats can live over 20 years, certain species of tortoises can live well over 150, and ant and termite queens have been known to reach 20. But it's not just age that matters here, it is staying healthy and meeting the enormous energy demands that such lives require. Studying that is what gives Steve hope that animals may someday help us all to live longer and healthier lives.
To be an emergency room doctor is to be a professional listener to stories. Each patient presents a story, finding the heart of that story is the doctor's most critical task. In Tornado of Life, a doctor's journey through constraints and creativity in the ER, physician Jay Barrick shares the struggles of doctors and patients in a series of short, powerful, and affecting essays that invite the reader into stories rich with complexity and messiness. In the vein of Daniel Ofri, Atul Gawande, Suzanne Coven, and Mikhail Sekaris, Jay Barrick beautifully conveys the messy art of doctoring. Patients come to the ER with lives troubled by scales of misfortune that have little to do with disease or injury. ER doctors must be problem finders before they are problem solvers. Cheryl, for example, whose story is a chaos narrative of, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this, and this, and this, tells Barrick that she is stuck in the tornado of life. What will help her, and what will help another patient, Mr. K, who seems like a textbook case of post-combat PTSD, but turns out not to be. Barrick describes, among other things, the emergency of loneliness, his own frightening experience as a patient, the patient who demanded a hug from him, and emergency medicine during COVID-19. These stories often end without closure or solutions. The patients are discharged into the world, but if they're lucky, the doctor has listened to their stories as well as treated them. Barrick is a practicing emergency room physician and a professor of emergency medicine at Albert Medical School of Brown University.
Curious Minds. The first thing we have to talk about with this book is the authors, Danny Bassett and Perry Zurn, a philosopher and physicist who between them have 2 PhDs, a MacArthur Genius Grant, multiple TED Talks, dozens of professional awards, and a reputation among their peers for brilliant work. They're also identical twins, born from the same egg and raised as daughters, the one now identifies as male. The acquiring editor of this book says they are the most curious people he knows, curious about themselves, curious about the world, and curious about what makes us curious. In this book, Danny and Perry identify 3 archetypes of curiosity: the busybody who flits about gathering stories and random facts, the hunter who knows what they want and ignores the rest, and the dancer, the most interesting and evolved of the 3, who creates new and intricate networks, dancing through the world, making observations and connections where none had been identified before. The authors explore how curiosity can be nurtured and how our education can impact our development as curious human beings, making this a fascinating book for readers who are interested in the brain, education, and human development. A nice bonus is that the book is illustrated by Poonam Mistry with works of art that are as beautiful and intricate and connected as the book is to read. The World in a Shell. Book readers have fallen in love with hawks, octopuses, and lots of other quirky creatures. Now it's time for snails to have their moment in the sun, or at least under the shade of a nice leaf. But The World in a Shell is not just a book about snails. It's about the environment and extinction and the forces of history and culture and colonization. The author Tom Van Doren offers fascinating stories about snails and their history. In the 19th century, there were over 750 different species of land snails in Hawaii. Naturalists described them as looking like living jewels, hanging from the trees like clusters of grapes. Today, most of those species are extinct or rapidly dying off. Worldwide, there have been more documented extinctions of snail species than there have been of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians combined, which probably surprises you as much as it did me. Another surprising fact: the U.S. Army is one of the largest funders of snail conservation in the Hawaiian Islands. Less fun, but also important, is the context Van Doren provides about how shell collecting and the study of snails has roots in the colonization of Hawaii. The World in a Shell should appeal to readers of Elizabeth Colbert and Robert Macfarlane, where popular science meets meditative nature writing. The Mushroom at the End of the World is another good comparison title for how this book approaches the biological and cultural complexities of species loss. So thank you all so much for being with us to hear about these highlights of the Fall 22 MIT Press list. We've got so many other great books coming up this fall, so please check out our Edelweiss catalog or contact your PRH rep for more information. Thank you.